Welcome to the ECR Retail Loss, Sell More and Lose Less podcast series. Food waste is an enormous cost to the industry, but as we have learnt from Professor Lisa Jack, we're aware that it's more than just the cost of throwing away the food item. And in this podcast, I'm joined by Richard Thaleman, and we'll be discussing the themes that emerged from Professor Lisa Jack's new report that's coming out towards the end of this year on the true cost of food waste, and start to understand what the elements of those costs can be, but critically what that might inform us in terms of where we might want to make savings in the business. Well, look, we had an update a week ago on our longest ever research project, which is the true cost of food waste or food surplus. And it's been authored by Professor Lisa Jack. And the time, I suppose, has been consumed with waiting for data from retailers. But we've got to a point now where we think we need to publish something. And so we had a sort of workshop stroke meeting where we had about sort of 40 or 50 retailers show up, food waste experts, and listen to perhaps the conclusions that Lisa was coming to. She's a professor of accounting. It was quite complicated, quite in depth. But we had then had a discussion around, where was this heading? What would be the conclusions? How would retailers be able to use the conclusions of the data and perhaps a model? And so, what were your thoughts on what took place? And are you excited for this new report that's coming out, we hope, in September?
Yeah, indeed. It was a great presentation, and I always think that it's good when you think about the participants that are on that call and they're from varying functions. That's always helpful, because when we're now looking at the full end-to-end cost of this, is that it includes so many people and so many decision makers. So I think having those people across the board and having some feedback from them really helps drive this forward. I think there's one of my thoughts on that was that there's a slight invisible instigator of food waste as well, which may need to come into that spreadsheet, which is around the perception of consumer demand on availability. So you will always have an amount of food surplus left over due to trying to make sure that you've got full availability at all times. So I think that may need to come back into that as a part of that full calculation, and really just sort of like facing into the fact that we will need to have some surplus due to availability on case sizes, etc., etc. But the whole report, obviously, and its intent is to give us that data back so that you can make informed decisions on case sizes and whether or not it's a product that's worth stocking anymore within those retailers. So I think the interesting thing is as well is that when you drive through that, what we're talking about, and that mixed audience there, is that really what we're getting to is that we should be able to deliver on the financial benefits of reducing food waste, food surplus, and the environmental benefits alike. And many of the retailers now talking quite openly about how important it is about the price, the cost versus the weight being the environmental measure and the cost being the sort of business profitability. And I think the closer we can get to understanding both those parts is that you'll make some real good decisions on what it is that we really need to do to drive this down.
Yeah, no, we talked a lot about the various costs associated with, donations and with marking down labour costs,
yes.
Having an app and etc. One of the things that was really interesting, and I know you picked up on it, was this piece around unexplained loss and whether that should be included in the true cost of food surplus. Certainly, in my experience working on the newspapers and magazines category, we knew that if you had a lot of surplus, there would be much more likely to have high levels of unexplained losses. So that's typically, 45% of all magazines in the UK, at least, sent to stores get sent back.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you've sort of, in your experience and what you thought about that, because it was quite an interesting area of discussion.
Yeah, well, I think in some of this, when we look at it, I guess some of this data going back will be really beneficial to feed and play back to the commercial teams. And I think when you talk about it in that way, that the overall loss, no matter whether it's unknown loss, known loss, should be played back, because it's all part of operating as a business and, stocking that line inside the retailer. So I think any loss, or whether it's explained, unexplained, is that it should all come back into that equation, because it's part of the overall cost of serving that product to customers. So I think in whatever way that comes about in this final report, I think it's definitely beneficial.
Yeah, no, there was another metric, wasn't there, about how much the volume, or the volume that's sold at markdown below the cost of goods. Again, that's a sort of quite a scary number for some particular items. Again, pushes that focus on assortment.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to look at that, because there'll be some products that maybe you'd make a decision not to sell them if your overall profitability is gone below that marker. You wouldn't stock that anymore. But then again, there are some footfall drivers. I think we've mentioned before, when you look at tubs of sweets, they don't very rarely make any money anymore. They sell them so cheaply, but it gets people to come into the shop. So I think there are some of those, but I don't think that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about if we're ending up having to reduce it, and all that is hidden from the commercial teams and buying teams, they might think that they're selling a lot of product and it's a great product to stock, but actually we're not making very much money on.
Yeah, so this whole, so I suppose your point is, the visibility, providing that full visibility to the true cost end to end, will lead to probably better decisions, but also, I guess, help justify investments as well.
Yes, yeah. And I can, sort of visualize these conversations that the buying teams have with the suppliers, and being able to play back that data. It doesn't mean to say it's a stick to say, well, we don't want to stock it anymore. The suppliers might make some different decisions. Again, going back to case sizes, product pack sizes.
Yeah, shelf life. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, look, very, very good. Well, we're looking forward to the reports. I mean, it has been 4 years, but we've been promised something in September. So let's see if it's September 2024 or another date. But Professor Lee, as you said, did a really great job there, and we'll look forward to seeing that. So thanks for taking the time, Richard, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to all the ECR retail loss community for the sharing of their knowledge, their research and latest learnings that ensure that we become truly a global platform for learning. My name is Colin Peacock. This is the Sell More and Lose Less podcast, and if you liked it, please subscribe so you automatically get all future episodes. And also, if you think your colleagues and friends might also like it, please ask them to follow ECR Retail Loss on LinkedIn and tune in to our next podcasts. If you didn't like it, then let us know and we'll try and fix it. Either way, see you next time. Thank you again.